This is the Night Shift Podcast, powered by Black and Gold Banneret, your home for news and analysis from all UCF night sports. The Night Shift starts now.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into this edition of Night Shift Live. Of course, I am Kyle Nash, student of the game, in for Eric Lopez, hosting the thing for you tonight. So, you might have heard UCF went to work tonight, 68-7 your final over the Aggies of North Carolina, A&T. Somehow not necessarily a surprising outcome. Maybe for the fact, listen, I had heard the spread was 20 points and had questions. But then when I started to hear about the operating budget of the aforementioned Aggies, I thought maybe things would be different, right? So it's a whole thing that came out. Of course, we will, as we go through it here, we'll notice that Jaden Nixon, it was kind of the Jaden Nixon show, starting Jaden Nixon for the first half. Elements of Taven Jackson, how we felt like he did. The defense coming out, doing their job. Special teams being appropriate. Of course, how did we feel about the second half? A Jakari Brown sighting being a thing there too. We'll get to all of that as we go through this edition of Night Shift. But first, let's go to some of your comments out there from Night Nation and all those of you that have shifted to spend your night with us here in particular. Eric Edwards in, one of our regulars. I feel bad for Miles Montgomery. 2 weeks in a row lost a TD on penalties. Right. And then actually, I had just come from the press conference where Coach Frost had actually mentioned, I asked him personally actually about penalties and where he felt the team was at. And frankly, he said that they're not where they want him to be yet. That makes a lot of sense. I don't think I'm breaking any news here, right? But we had the two defensive penalties, one with a hands to face with John Walker, the suplex, I believe that was Antoine Jackson that had that one. But in particular, like those kind of things, those mental errors are things that could change games, right? It actually put the Aggies in position to score sooner than they actually did with their late touchdown there in garbage time for sure. The special teams had a penalty as well. How do you go offsides on a kickoff? I have no idea. I know that's something that Pete Alomar will be taking to task in the coming weeks of practice. Of course, there's a bye week coming up. That's something we'll go over a bit later. And then offensively, listen, I know that here on the Night Shift podcast in general, I'm the offensive line guy. I wasn't impressed. Didn't like what I saw in some cases, right? You're taking points off the board for one, again, which, hey, I'm with you, Eric. I felt the same exact way seeing Miles lose another touchdown. That's a whole thing. But false starts, an illegal snap, a center getting called for an illegal snag. Okay. Guys, yeah, not a fan. Okay, that's the kind of, shall we say, bang my head against the table stuff that shouldn't be happening at this particular point there too. So Chet Bortz comes in on Miles for sure. He's a solid teammate and competitor. He'll get his. I'm sure of it. Yeah, and when it comes to big plays, Coach Frost said it himself, that's sometimes kind of a luck of the draw thing, whose proverbial turn it is to get whatever big play in a particular week. But, hey, listen, at days in, I know Miles Montgomery is a guy on this team that's incredibly likable. He had his 8 carries for 35 yards, had another long run. Of course, we're taking off the board there too. But, I mentioned the Jaden Nixon show starring Jaden Nixon earlier on in the game, right? Because when you come out and you return a kickoff, 96 yards, by the way, for those who are keeping track at home, keeping score. When you return a kickoff like that for a program that hasn't seen it in, coming up on 8 years, 2 months away from 8 years? It's not a full 8 years since the last time UCF's done it. But Scott Frost was still the coach back then, right? And it was one Mike Hughes, current NFLer, that executed it, right? And Eric Edwards says it best, right? Reservations for 6 at the Cabana is exactly what happened. And actually, Coach Frost was asked about that in the press conference. He had said, I think his words were eerily similar to that Mike Hughes return. Granted, Mike Hughes was more towards the end of his game as opposed to Jay Nixon coming right out and opening it there. But listen, this is something we've talked about at length here on the Night Shift podcast in general. Bing! Oh, wait, sorry. I forgot I have the controls here. Jeff would be very annoyed if I didn't use the appropriate ding. There we go. So now that I have that in place, yeah, exactly. I know you're here. So with all that in mind, of course, I have Jeff Sharon behind me here in this booth where he's making sure I'm using the appropriate bing. But yeah, with that, he mentioned the two plays being eerily similar. I'll say this. The topic of having a dedicated coach for special teams has shown, right? You've gotten better returns in general. You've gotten more discipline, although I did mention the one moment of false discipline, with, I believe it was Jamal Johnson that jumped or was offsides on the kickoff. That could just be a moment of zeal. Guys, getting opportunities that normally wouldn't in games like this. It's a whole situation here too. Michael, I got a comment here from Michael White that I want to address that really kind of backs the point I was making earlier. Definitely seeing an O-line in a formation phase. Take away the three big runs, and it's about 150 yards rushing, at less than 4 yards per clip. Well, I haven't done the appropriate math there, but I think the description on an O-line in formation kind of still, molding itself, gelling is the popular term, right? When you're talking about O-linemen getting together. And listen, we mentioned that in particular on the Night Shift Live last week. When it came to that, the big hit on Fancher, other plays like that happened last week where you saw openings, you saw occurrences, you saw things happen that probably shouldn't. And, when your biggest criticism is your O-line getting off the ball, one of two things is happening, right? You're either already slow or you're uncomfortable, and it leads you to slow, right? And I think that's the formation piece we're talking about in the comments, right? When you're not as confident in what you're about to do, things just happen slower. Now, it also helps when you have incredible athletes. And I get the defense that you make here, Michael, in that, you have some big runs, but then what? Like, we don't know whether it's going to be an 86-yard run. Maybe they break off more and it's like, a few big runs throughout. That's the issue of having a game where you look good beating a team that you've just outclassed. I mean, coach said it best, like UCF just has more resources. They did what they were supposed to do. Now, something Coach Frost pointed out that I kind of agreed with, they didn't play down to the competition, right? That didn't happen here. They put up nearly a 70-burger on the team. Is it impressive? Probably not, but it's also what they were supposed to do, which one could argue they did not do against Jacksonville State last week, right? So there's that aspect of it. Do I start a party for that? No, I'm not here saying Big 12 conference champions on the strength of that. That's not going to happen. Do I feel a bit better about this team being a bowl team? Sure, in the month of September, it's going the right way, though I do feel like the game that may set that momentum will be played in September. Of course, it's the one upcoming here at the Bounce House in 2 weeks. Again, the whole early bye week thing is odd, but if you got two of them, having an early one's not so bad. I get it. So, but with Jay Nixon, seeing his speed at work, I have to admit, I've heard about it. We've heard about everything, this team being fast, but seeing it on display tonight, I don't feel like it's Adrian Killins, right? And when I alluded to the speed on this team and what they have in, actually, this is going back to one of the 5 Big Questions articles that we had leading in here too. In this running back duo, in Montgomery and Nixon, trying to be, I don't want to say the next version of Otis Anderson and Adrian Killins, but kind of an offshoot of it, right? Do I feel like that Miles Montgomery and Jaden Nixon are more capable of perhaps running between the tackles than Killins and Anderson? Yeah, I do. Do I think they're as fast? No, that's insane. But I don't, you don't necessarily need to be track athletes, to do what you did and find the speed to take something to the house like that. What was a 66-yarder and an 87-yarder? That just is unbelievable speed. I can't even come up with a better adjective than that. So running to the outside is something that's working, and that threat widens a defensive line to try to contain it, and then now you can attack the middle. You don't need Taj McGowan or a third running back to do that like the previous Scott Frost group did. You have guys that are big enough to where you can just instantly, with one of those players, shift to the inside and attack. Having different players on the field might give away what you're trying to do. I mean, I'd hate to plug another show, but I've had this criticism of NFL teams out there, right? The Jaguars come to mind. But when you have guys that are just a little bit bigger, again, we're not talking, fullbacks or anything, but when they have just a little bit more meat so they won't get necessarily hurt or injured trying to run between the tackles, obviously you're better for it because the defense can't see what you're doing. Now, passing the ball. Okay. And I'm talking to some of the people there in the UCF media and all this. First of all, I don't want to take a victory lap, but for all the people who told me I was wrong about Taven Jackson being the starter, I know we have the huge sample size of 2 games, so obviously I'm correct. But boy, it certainly felt like Taven Jackson was more comfortable in his start than Cam Fancher was in his. And I get it. Cam got hurt, nobody wanted to see that happen. We have the limited sample size. But opening the game, Taven looked poised. I know, weaker team. There's a lot of other different circumstances. But here's what I know. The first big ball from Fancher was right out of the gate and was a big overthrow, big miss. With Taven, his ball was slightly underthrown, but more on target and on the money, so that the next long ball that came out was where it needed to be to set up the first of Jackson's touchdowns. So and it's a point I made last week that the experienced quarterback in Cam Fancher was less poised than what we've seen in Jackson as a younger guy. So that theme continuing, I'm not here to say we know who the starting quarterback is. I'm not here to say that Coach Frost is going to name one before next week. I can see the question coming up Monday, and we'll talk about it, on the upcoming edition of Frostbites for sure. But my early prediction is that Coach Frost doesn't bring it up. So I see some comments here. I definitely got to go with this statement here. It's a good get right game. Yeah, a tune-up, right? It looks like they had fun out there as a team. Yeah, no, where is? I'm not going to say that name, but yeah, that's a good statement. I think that's the description. And of course, Eric Edwards in the comments paying tribute to cheese and bread from Adrian Killins, of course. No, classic stuff there. And some of those Jaden Nixon runs were reminiscent of that. I think another point in the passing game is Taven Jackson knew when to roll. I liked the use of bootleg to keep things from being predicted. I think there's an element of using that speed and a guy that can clearly throw it down the field and can do so comfortably, utilizing him to roll out. And when they make the mistake of leaving a running lane, Jackson can take it. That's a good thing. I think he's smart about when he slides based on the short sample size we've seen so far with that. We certainly don't have a John Rice Plumlee problem where he's trying to take on the entire world by himself. Thank goodness for that. The last thing we need is another situation where we see all these quarterbacks fighting for the position and then, somebody else is getting it because they're injured. That's not that's certainly not the ask. In a situation like this, I think that's pretty obvious and clear to say. something else I think is interesting is tonight, DJ Black had his 3 catches. Leading receiver, though, was Dwayne Thomas, right? But better overall for the group at large, I'm seeing 4 players with at least 1 play of 20 yards receiving or more. Okay, that's not something that was happening against Jacksonville State. Again, please be aware of the opponent, right? Manage your expectations, Knight Nation, okay? This doesn't mean all of them are going to be W's. That's not how that works. But it was certainly something that shows at least a reliable enough passing game to where defense has to at least respect that the ball can be put down the field if you overcommit to trying to stop their run. Eric Edwards in the comments here. Speaking of cheese and bread, how many subs did Paul eat during the rain delay? I don't have that answer yet. I'm not sure if he's spoken to the media yet about that or if that topic came up. I'm sure the Sentinels or Matt Rochelle will follow up on that if it comes up. But, of course, Donnie Doc Strouble will be here in a bit to talk about that. Maybe Paul Rubel came to the mic and addressed his latest sandwich habits here. I don't know. But, yeah. Your back-to-back games with rain delays, obviously, that should be mentioned here. And I think there's an element of it that is an advantage for UCF. Now, granted, at the moment, see, this is the part where I'm missing Eric Lopez. At the moment, I'm not sure where the North Carolina game is scheduled to be. Last I saw today, it was still a TBD. We probably won't know until next week. Maybe as late as the week after because TV does TV things sometimes. But that is if there's another rain delay, God forbid. If there's another rain delay or there's more inclement weather, at this point, I feel like that's kind of a little extra advantage to UCF at this point. Weather in general in the bounce house has been something that favors, UCF in certain situations. Less so perhaps for North Carolina guys, but it's an opportunity to capitalize on all, one of the little things as you get in the guys' heads, perhaps, to play the game. So that element of how on earth did the sub sandwich thing become a thing? I don't know. But listen, as an offensive lineman too, 4 or 5 in rain delay. Listen, that's not even something I would have messed with back then. That's its whole other thing. I don't even. That's next level. Granted, I'm not 6'11", so maybe that's part of it too. I don't know, but I want to go over the defense too because, and this is definitely something I'll talk about when I'm seeing how well the Knights were making the grade tonight. There, of course, on Black and Gold Banneret. I know I'm not doing a bell because I'm running the ones and twos here, so I'm trying to do too many things at once. But defensively, I got to say, again, lesser opponent. This was a game that UCF probably paid for. At least they didn't lose like some other teams this week did to, well, I don't want to bring up that other school that wears green, but yeah, beating the Gators, really? Okay. So, but yeah, that's a whole thing. The defense tonight was doing their job. And I think seeing more aggression up front, granted, I'm always going to be more biased to be talking about the trenches such as they are. That's just where I live. But after a negative 3 and out, right? It was 3 and out, and I think the total drive was a negative 7 yards. After a very athletic interception by McDonald, another fumble recovery, the strip sack fumble in the end zone that became Rodney Laura's touchdown in the end zone was a defensive stand that I haven't seen the likes from this team in a while, right? First of all, you already pinned them back deep in their territory. Before Nigel E. Kelly gets the strip sack, right, what is it we see? We see Laura, 2 plays previous, tackle for loss, putting them on their 8. We see Horace Lockett doing Horace Lockett things again. That's its own crazy thing. And then That's the play where Nigel E. Kelly, the next play that he does, where he does the strip sack. So that whole exchange is kind of a, I don't want to say metaphor, but is representative um, of what the defense did tonight. And I think that was them at their finest. The final stat, giving, I don't want to look at stats for this particular game, but what I did dislike the most was the penalties I mentioned earlier, right? You have a suplex for an unnecessary roughness, which, come on, guys. Then you have the personal foul with the hands to the face, right? It's a silly mental mistake, and coach said it himself. This is what causes teams to get back in it, right? Now, granted, there wasn't threat of that here, but the discipline is something that coach hit a lot, right? That's going to be a focus for the coming practice here. And it looks like we're just about to get Donnie Docks right here. He's got his camera lined up the right way. We'll have him here in a minute. But that discipline piece is going to be the target for the upcoming practice. So said Coach Frost. And I can only imagine that everyone's in agreement with that for the most part. So, yeah, I'll leave that at that. But thank you. I have books now. I have paper. But let's go ahead and get right into it. It looks like Donnie Docks is lined up and ready to go here. So let me pull him in. Donnie Docks, what's up, buddy?
How we doing? Can you hear me?
Hey, he's even got a mic. He's fancy.
Yes.
So
about time.
As you started, I mean, obviously I was there with you to see Coach, and then I came up here to start this edition of Night Shift Live. Once I was left, who did we see and what did you get out of him?
Yeah, so we got Nigel E. Kelly, we got the star of the show, Jaden Nixon, and we got Taven Jackson, all in that order. And Jaden was obviously to the moon, very excited, still running on adrenaline, even though he did joke that the Tylenol is starting to wear off and he does not think that he could run that many yards a second time tonight. But obviously,
oh gosh, that's too bad.
I mean, we saw an excellent performance from him right out the gate. He wanted to bounce back from a difficult stretch against Jacksonville State in his opener, and he just let it fuel his motivation all week long. And then right away, I mean, just ripped off a 96-yarder to the house. First time we've seen that. You've probably already brought this up, Nash, since Mike Hughes in Frost's first tenure in 2017. And Nigel E. Kelly, he's in a position where he loves how the defense played, but he understands, and it seems like the collective mindset amongst all three guys is that they understand that there's places that they need to improve. The schedule is only going to get harder from here, and this bye week is super, super important for everyone involved, just to continue growing and to continue to become a cohesive unit that can make the necessary plays needed to beat a North Carolina, to thrive in conference play once we get to that point.
So I'm going to go to the comments here real quick on some stuff. Well, actually, no, there is one, too, that came up. Was Paul Rubel among those that spoke tonight?
Paul Rubel was not among those that spoke
Oh, so
tonight.
we don't get the sandwich update. Sorry, Eric.
No, we don't get the sandwich update. The good old Jersey Mikes, huh?
Yeah, no, it's a whole thing here, too. But Eric makes a point here. Hopefully no hurricane cancellation with UNC. We've seen that in the past. Like what's happened the last two times they've been scheduled to play them. Yeah, Eric made the point just the same. It works for me. Let's see. Going through here. Well, Docs, while we're doing that, what was some other items, like from the player's perspective? Obviously, Jaden was excited to do what he did. What was kind of did he comment at all about his playing special teams and that part of it, and the kind of the work to revamp that group for this team?
Yeah, he actually touched on that, and that was one of my questions to him is, like, he talked about, obviously he was able to get loose, but he talked about the importance of guys setting up that kick return in front of him, setting the blocks, clearing the path. And that's a testament that he talked about to Coach Alomar and just how the special teams has grown and the position that they get to be in as a result of Coach Alomar's expertise. And Pete told him before this game, he's like, we're going to go get one. So he instilled that confidence in Jaden ahead of time, and they were able to execute it. And Jaden was just beyond giving credit to himself. He was giving credit to his teammates and the position that they put him in to succeed. And to him, I mean, he sounds very, very excited about this special teams unit and what they can do moving forward, especially under Coach Alomar's watch.
And what kind of talk was there to kind of temper, if any, the fact that, okay, hold on, y'all, like this is great and everything, but it's North Carolina A&T. How much of that was part of it, and how much in your evaluation, like what kind of curve are you putting on the proverbial grave?
Yeah, I think that it's one of those things where they have to keep those expectations in check, and they understand that there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I mean, they get a very important bye week to rest their bodies, but they have to continue growing. And I obviously it's easy to give them an A+, but again, this is an FCS opponent, and the last one, the only FCS opponent that they will face this whole season. Obviously, they got Chapel Bill in North Carolina coming to town in 2 weeks,
Oh,
and
you're
then
going to do that? Okay.
hey, listen, got you got to do it, man. But then we go right into conference play, and they understand that there's a lot of places that they need to do better. I mean, Taven Jackson spoke to that especially. He thinks that he could have played a lot better, especially in a situation like this. And I mean, we heard the things that Frost touched upon, and it was good to hear the players echo those sentiments on the improvements that need to be made on both sides of the ball if they want to ensure success against more formidable competition.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned formidable competition. This is a conversation we had with some of the people there in the press box tonight, there, Docs, and I wanted to kind of kick it around here. Maybe the commenters have something to think about it too, but I know that I've alluded to the fact that the North Carolina game to me could kind of make or break bowl eligibility for UCF, right? But now that we're seeing the Kansas State struggle against non-power schools, that we're seeing apparently the West Virginias have their issues there too. By the way, both marks on UCF schedule, and of course, assuming there's no injuries or any other, catastrophe that takes place to alter the course of the proverbial destiny, so to speak. Is it? I mean, I'm not saying you should throw the party, but things suddenly seem a bit more possible than previously, right?
Yeah, I think that a lot of opinions can be made from what we see on paper, and a lot of preseason expectations can be flipped on their head. And we don't know necessarily how this team is going to perform in the big moments, but we do know what we are seeing from their upcoming opponents. And it's not the strength of schedule that was maybe foretold in the past. Now, in saying that, it this is a team that needs to be on their game regardless. I mean, what's happening this week with a North Carolina, with a Kansas State, that poor performance by those teams is not necessarily going to be replicated when it's time for UCF to take the gridiron against them. So it's a matter of just continuous improvement. But I think it's a little early to say that the North Carolina game is an indicator of bowl eligibility. There's so much season to go after that.
I shouldn't say indicator, like I don't want to use that word, but kind of like the trajectory of the season was kind of pointed by the Florida game last year. I'm thinking North Carolina is that element. It's not going to be end all be all. It's obviously not must win. It's the third bleeding game of the season, but I do think the trajectory, excuse me, is made easier or more difficult based on that game's outcome. That's kind of where I'm coming from with that.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that this could be twofold. I think that if UCF goes and wins that game, there can be, I don't want to sound harsh here, but a false sense of excitement given the caliber of coach, so to speak, coming to town and the resume. North Carolina's been a ranked team in the past. I mean, they've got a decent pedigree, though they are mainly a basketball school. In saying that, I do think, to your point, like you said, I mean, this could this is a good test, and it does give us an outlook. But then we go into Big 12 play, and that's what matters most. And there's a lot of winnable games on the schedule that, especially what we're starting to see upcoming opponents struggle. But it's going to be a great test. And I think that it's good to have optimism, but expectations should be tempered.
Yeah, and I'm going to go to some of the comments for this because I think they echo a lot of your point here too. MC Gusto, I watched the Iowa State game, and those lines are stout. First of all, yes, but yeah, let's say we don't play them, thankfully, but the Big 12 is going to kick our butts all over the field. I'm not saying that's universally true, but listen, Matt Campbell in Iowa State, that's a stand-up program. I think if I were to pick a team that's going to win the Big 12 right now, it's Matt Campbell's Iowa State. So I think that's kind of the other extreme. When you see them, you get a little disappointed, right? And then the concept of going to Lubbock to battle oil money, that's going to be a separate challenge too. I think there's an element too, and I'll add this comment, Docs, that I think goes in nicely from Matt J. Enjoyed the win. Nothing I've seen so far has given me any confidence we can win a Big 12 game. O-line not opening holes against inferior competition is the biggest concern. Too many unknowns for now. I'm not going to go not opening up holes. They should be able to move people better than they did, but saying there were no holes is just a completely inaccurate statement. But they need to be better. All of that to say, yeah, we don't know enough about this team yet. I think Matt has a great statement that lands the plane there perfectly. And I agree. I will allude to as much tonight in my making the grade piece that will go up there on the, oh my goodness, on the blackandgoldbanneret.com. The ones and twos are playing tricks on me, guys. Sorry. There you go. So yeah, I think that's really where we kind of land the plane with that. So let me see. MC, yeah, I'm not even addressing that one. That's kind of crazy. Why you're hating on the kicker already? Yeah, he missed a kick. Okay, sure, but that wasn't even this week. What are we talking about? I don't know. So let's excuse me. Let's take it here. If you, Donnie Docs, were Scott Frost, what is it you concentrate on first? Obviously, you try to fix everything. That's the job. But where do you think UCF is most in need of overhaul in your mind?
To me, I believe that they need to be able to scheme receivers open beyond short yardage kind of plays, like beyond the RPOs, beyond the screens. I need to see some shots taken, like it, a la the throw to DJ Black against Jacksonville State. That was a beautiful post route, opened up. I mean, he got behind the coverage. It was able to just fall right in his chest. That, to this point, even considering tonight, has been Taven Jackson's best throw of his very, very early UCF career. But I think that there needs to be a little bit more than that. I think that a run game is important, and they've got some horses in their stable. We saw that tonight. Miles Montgomery, Jaden Nixon, even Stacey Gage got some time on the field, given the situation in the game. But again, you got to be able to pass if you want to make true progress, especially in a Power 4 conference, because they are going to face defenses that stifle the run. And I really did think that I would see more from Taven Jackson tonight. And it's probably player speak, but I appreciate that he held himself accountable despite the win. But 12 of 21 against an FCS opponent. And again, not all of those incompletions were on him, but the inability to take the deep shot and make the connections to really show what this offense can do downfield. That's been absent so far. So I think that they need to really, really work on scheming those guys open.
Yeah, Eric pointed something out that I misspoke about. He missed an extra point. Okay, I'm just not ready to panic about that yet. I'll put it that way. Obviously it's not something you want to see happen, but I mean, I'll put it this way. He got plenty of practice in this game kicking extra points. So there you go. I think I'll let that slide a little bit. But And actually, you know what? I'm going to go with this comment too. I like it here. I think it's worth mentioning here. Greatest improvement from week 1 to week 2 says to me that we are mediocre at best. Frost needs to add the fast playing into the mix of plays in order to win games in the Big 12. No, I don't agree with that necessarily. Fast play could just as easily bury you if you don't move the ball well. Then your defense is on the field too many times. And folks, if you guys heard me talk about time of possession killing this defense enough on this show, there's only one thing that can make it worse than what we saw with Malzahn's offense, completely unable to convert on third down as much as they needed to. And that is a fast offense like we used to see in the American, with Scott Frost doing that same thing to put the time of possession even further in favor of the other side, right? That's kind of the element of risk there too. So that's not necessarily, I don't know, that's not necessarily linked to failure or success. Yeah, I don't necessarily agree, but I don't. If you're talking about fast, as in getting off the ball, being more comfortable, attacking with more, what is it, fervor, I guess. In other words, looking confident, doing what you're doing. If that's what you mean by fast, then I completely agree. We're on the same page. And actually, let me go. Matt makes a comment here then, and I think he makes an adjustment that I think I agree with perfectly here. Kyle, not saying we didn't open holes on the offensive line, of course. In my eyes, we had to leverage our speed to the outside because the inside run lanes were clogged up more than not, concerning against FCS. That's nails it. That's the correct answer, right? Even though there were some inside holes opened, even Taven Jackson's first touchdown, I think, Matt, is the perfect metaphor for this, or the perfect, example of this, right? They had to fake an outside run for Taven to do a quarterback run inside on the goal line against an FCS team. It's concerning for me too. With that, I agree with you. I think you put it much better that way than just saying straight up we couldn't open holes. I appreciate the adjustment. You're 100% right with that. And let's see, Eric Edwards mentions, I'm not feeling confident about our long ball connections. Docs, I think you heard me talking about this on the sideline toward the end of the game. I want to hear your kind of theory on it too. But if you're expecting this team to be super successful down the field, this ain't that offense, okay? The long ball is there to set up the run.
Sure, I understand that. And I think that through a lot of like play action circumstance, you'll get those kind of results. But my thing is like, you don't have to hit it all the time. We understand that this team is not a deep ball threat. They've got good receivers, not great receivers that can create that kind of separation, but you need to be able to hit it sometimes because the one-dimensional aspect of like, okay, we're going to run, we're going to RPO, we're going to run, we're going to RPO. Like eventually there's a level of predictability that comes with game planning for this team. And to the point of going fast, I want to revisit that real quick. We understand the caliber of athletes that occupy this group. There's no question there. They can go fast when they want. Is the football IQ going to be there? And are they going to be able to generate the kind of schemes needed to beat the upper echelon of the kind of competition that they're going to face? But yeah, I don't. This is not a pass first team. Like that's clear from who's going under center, and that's clear from who's lining up on the outside.
I think who's under center is the biggest thing, Docs.
It is. It is. No, I mean, we saw that's why, and I told you this, Nash, against Jack State. The first play drawn up is a deep shot downfield from Cam Fancher, and he almost connected on it. But I'm like, that's a little bizarre. That is not what I expected for the first play.
Which is what made it perfect, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. They must have seen something. Coach Cooper, Frost signed off on it. They must have seen something, but I thought that was bizarre, to say the least, and would have been awesome if he connected, but that is the embodiment of who this team isn't. So,
which is why again, and this is why I like you bringing up the point in the first place, and Eric Edwards, Eric, good insight, man. Listen, Elo, I wish our Eric had as many good football. I'm joking, Elo. I'm joking. No, but yeah, Eric, this is why it's okay to be concerned about the pass game. It's because it ain't the forte. It ain't the fort. It ain't their strength. But they do need to be good enough at it to threaten it so things open up, right? I'll make an analogy I know you'll be familiar with, Donnie Docs, Mr. Magic on SI. If you hit some threes, maybe Paolo will get open enough to do some things and actually not have to carry the team. We know you're Paolo first, okay? But hit some threes, and then Paolo can become an all-star, and maybe you do something and win some games and become a champion. Yeah. I get it. UCF is run first. Miles Montgomery is awesome. We see great athleticism in Jaden Nixon. Taven got to hit some balls down the field. And I say Taven specifically because here's the final thing I want to ask you, Docs. Taven Jackson's the starter on your evidence, right?
On mine, yes. But that doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. You know, I think I was talking with a colleague I will not name on the way to the press room, and I do believe that this coaching staff, once Fancher is healthy again, not saying it's the right decision, I'm just saying.
You're just saying this is what you think is going to happen.
This is what I think might happen. I think that tonight was a show-me game for Taven Jackson, and outside of what he could do with his mobility, it wasn't much. He didn't produce, and again, I really, really, really hope that we do not see a quarterback carousel like we did last year. There was just no stability at the most important position in football. They need to have a guy that they can rely on. And then if a scheme calls for it, if you want a QB draw, Jakari Brown with his freak athleticism, you know, we've seen him turn it up tonight. Great. But you cannot be going week to week, who's our starter? And I hope that that's not the case. But I do not think that Taven Jackson is the end all be all. I just don't think it's going to work.
Well, for one, I appreciate that maybe Taven Jackson isn't your particular brand of vodka, but I do think he is the smoothest vodka that's in this proverbial liquor cabinet. How on earth did we get to that analogy? Nonetheless,
it's past midnight.
Yeah, that's true. We are about to wrap up. That's fair. But you know what? I'm pulling this up just to see what you say to it, Donnie Dogs.
All right, fair enough.
Matt asks, is Brown a running back? Why didn't he attempt a single pass beyond the line of scrimmage?
Oh, man. Well, he did have that one, over the middle. What was it, for 8 yards? I mean, it was on the money, but, what you see with Jakari, Matt, is what you're going to get. This is the same guy. He is a great athlete who can move, but expecting him to throw, he's the last of the guys that we should expect to throw. Granted, I agree with you. I would like to see him add to that part of the game, but I just think that the coaching staff knows what they're getting with him, and they are going to use him in very specific situations that do not call for throwing the ball. And that's just what we're going to see moving forward. The only way he's going to throw, and obviously none of us hopes this happens, but if Taven and Cam are out for the year or underperform so poorly that they have to rely on Jakari, that's the only way he's going to throw. That's it.
And I'm not sure. Hopefully the injury thing doesn't happen. And I'm not sure.
No, yeah, of course not.
Yeah, I'll put it this way. Let's keep away from outright catastrophe. Okay, it's a win. We don't need but UCF fans have had to deal with enough therapy sessions here with Dr. Nash, right? We were not looking for that right here. I'll say this again. Taven may not be your favorite quarterback to watch, but I think it's inescapable that he's the best one in the pin. So maybe they're still evaluating because they're not confident in anybody in particular. I get that. But let's remember, more poised than the experienced guy and can actually complete a pass down the field and do so in big moments, i.e. coming in basically in the second quarter and then, air quotes, saving the game with a game-winning touchdown to DJ Black, right?
Yeah.
Not that it should go that way. Not that it should go that way with non-powered teams. All of those things valid. There's still 2 weeks to clean up. They're going to be battling another team that is, at least at the moment, struggling. It'll be a good test, like you said. Yeah. I'll do that. Well, let me see what Eric has to say. This will probably be the last point. But don't you want Jackson to stay in? Like Elo says, Jackson has another year of eligibility, so it is better to take a flawed quarterback that may grow into next season, or go with Fancher that hasn't shown anything. Yeah, that
I
hasn't
agree with
shown.
that. I agree with that, Eric. That's a good point, because something I talked about last year after the Utah game, and this is such like college football is starved for this. I mean, we haven't really seen it in great depth since the Michigan title team, where they pretty much brought back every damn starter for 4 years straight until they won the whole thing. They need some
Here's a pain
semblance
in your voice, Ohio man, as you bring that up. But go ahead.
Hey, I'm keeping a poker face here. This team, I said this after Utah last year, they need to try to develop some semblance of a core, and what better place to start than the most important position in football? And yeah, Taven's extra year of eligibility is super, super important here. We know Cam's done after this. We know that. And I believe that with a little more work, he could be their long-term guy. Hopefully he is, if all the cards fall in the right place. But I think just from like a skill perspective, I don't know if the coaching staff is going to overthink the room, because to Elo's point against Jack State, that was his big gripe and qualm with the coaching staff. They overthought it. Cam was never the answer, but sometimes you can overthink these things. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. But I do agree that having a guy like Taven in the room and giving him the keys to the car maybe entices him to come back for another year instead of hitting the portal.
I mean, Elo has said it here. I've written it on blackandgoldbanneret.com. I think we're all in agreement that the development path is the best one. And I think Fancher's good enough to be a backup, to know a playbook. Maybe just stick in there. If you're in a position where you got to beat a Cincinnati or a Houston, cool. That works for me. But with all that in mind, I think it's time for us to land this plane. Donnie Docs, tell the world where you could be found, my friend.
Yeah, so you can find me personally. I should have put it in my handle here, but if you want to follow me on Twitter or X, whatever you decide to call it nowadays, it's Don Documents 407. Make sure to follow us at Black and Gold Banneret on Instagram and Facebook, UCF Banneret _SBN. If you like Blue Sky, we haven't been on it as much, but UCFBanneret.bsky.social.
Yourself, Don Doc.
I know. I'm not exactly giving it a resounding endorsement, am I? And then obviously find us on YouTube at NightShift. We're really happy with all you guys, telling your friends about us. We're getting more subscribers. We're really excited about the growth and happy to be back for another football season, and looking forward to interacting with all of you moving forward.
100%, right? 2 weeks, it'll be North Carolina. Of course, we'll have coverage and podcasting throughout the week with Night Shift and the blackandgoldbanneret.com. Don't forget to check out Things and Other Sports, by the way. Our guy Bryson Turner doing a lot of things. Cassidy Mills was doing some of the other sports as well. Make sure you check them out. And all the crew here at the Banneret. An honor, joy, and privilege to do things, of course. I am Kyle Nash, student of the game. You follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky as well at the SOTG. I'm not going to tell on myself. And, of course, as a student of the game on Facebook. And Making the Grade will be out shortly after this. So if you're a night owl, you can check that out tonight or tomorrow morning as you warm up for your NFL action. So for Don Docs Strouble, I am Kyle Nash, student of the game, filling in the chair for Eric Lopez tonight here. And thank you to everybody in the comments doing a thing. And until next time, everyone, class dismissed.